Okay, Kaz-san. We've known each other for how long? Maybe 3 years, 4 years.
I feel like you contacted us like in the year that Eigo Nodo came out, so it must have been 2007.
So it's
Yeah.
more than five. Okay, so we've known each other for a long time, and I
Yeah.
think I have an impression that even though basically you're the uh, uh, you know preaching the gospel of Ego Nodo,
Uh-huh.
and we are on the receiving end. But I have an impression that your English also has improved dramatically since I first heard you on your video or recorded file. Do you feel the same way, or what do you
I
think?
have, yes, I have to say that as I have progressed. Um, yeah, I have to agree with you on that one. Um,
Hmm.
Even recently, I feel I finally overcome the overcame the last hurdle of easily becoming nervous when I speak English. Um,
Are you?
e-
We don't. You don't sound like you're nervous at all. You've
uh,
never.
that's because I finally came to realization that when you speak English, you really, really want to deep breathe and then use all the air you have in your lung to finish your sentence. Or in other words, you just keep talking until air runs out of my lungs. And but
Mm.
but I actually
Is it a,
yeah.
is,
Go ahead.
is it a matter of practice, or just keep it in mind and?
I told Gina about this, and she says that, well, we say that in the book, which is true. In one of the first chapters, we cover the importance of breathing, and we do
Hmm.
say you have to use a lot of breathing. So it is kind of funny for me to say, oh my God, recently I finally became aware of the importance of deep breathing. But
Uh,
I just really had to happen to me like that in that way.
yeah.
What I mean by that is that I am a speech club member of Toastmasters
Right.
Club, and
Right.
I had to make 10 speeches to become kind of like certified as as like
Official
just,
member.
no, it's an equivalent of Shokyu, uh, 1級, 2級, 3級, but I finally got a status called CC, Competent Communicator, and to reach that level, I had to do 10 speeches in front of my colleagues. And every
Uh-huh.
time I spoke, I was very nervous, and nervousness, in my case, used to translate into the softness or the resonant level of my English. So that was
Right.
really
Right.
bothering me.
I
But
see.
finally, I realized that I just have to deep breathe all the time, right? Like this, and keep doing that until I finish my air. So
Uh,
now I am at the level where I can finally focus on refining my speech by doing things such as controlling pitch or trying to add emotion, or even like
I
hand gesture, for example,
I see.
to effectively communicate, uh,
Uh,
yeah, with people.
mm. But you know, to remind yourself that you have to constantly breathe deeply, that's not something we normally do in our daily life, is it not?
I agree with you on that. For some reason, the Japanese people tend to breathe very shallowly, and
Mm.
I knew that all the time, but I wasn't able to really figure out how to do that. Like, I try to remember it every time I try to speak, but when you become nervous, you even forget what's important. You even forget
Mm.
that breathing is very important. So,
Mm.
yeah, I guess even now I have to struggle um, reminding myself, okay, I have to use a lot of air. Even now, I think. But in your
So,
case, I think you always did the right thing, and your English was always stable, resonant, consistent.
oh, thank you. But I'm a very nervous person, even in Japanese. I guess I mentioned this when I was in DC with you. I'm basically an introvert, so every time I talk with someone new or in front of a large audience, I get stage fright very easily. So even though I might look, calm and you know composed, but deep down, in the deep recess of my heart, I'm very, very nervous. I'm very, very frightened.
But in your case, even when, I mean, nervousness that you may experience does not translate into the quality of voice that you're producing. So that's really
You
good.
think?
Yeah.
Thank, thank you. I've never, I'm not aware of that myself. As for the deep breathing, when I was in high school or junior high school, yoga was introduced to Japan, and yoga was enormously popular. And part of the yoga practice was deep breathing, breathing from the diaphragm, the stomach, fukushiki kokyu.
Right.
So actually, in those days, I did a lot of practice of fukushiki kokyu. And in those days, I thought fukushiki kokyu was essential to good pronunciation of English. So up until recently, very recently, I have believed that fukushiki kokyu is very important for English pronunciation. But since I came across Eigo Nodo and practiced the Eigo Nodo,
Oh, I just pushed
oh,
the
suddenly
radio because it's right next to me. Yeah.
now I don't necessarily believe that Fukushiki Kokyu is essential to good pronunciation of English. But of course, it is very good for your health and maybe, making speeches and stuff like that. By the way, what you're saying does not necessarily mean we have to practice Fukushiki Kokyu.
No, just
Is
use a
it?
lot of air.
Ah, right, right. I
But I
see.
think there are things that you can do to make it easy to deep breathe. Um, for example, when you sleep, I feel like if you sleep on the side way, as opposed to the way I used to sleep, which is to face up, if you sleep
Hmm.
on the side way, I feel like it is easier to taking a lot of air even when I'm sleeping. Do you know what I mean? It's what a dog does.
No.
Right next to me, there's a dog right here, and he's sleeping like sideway. And then as a
And you
result, her lungs kind of are able to expand and what's the other way?
when you
Come
when you
back
sleep when you sleep on your side, your lung expands.
in a natural way. And I think that's how animals sleep.
That's a new theory, I
It's
think.
kind of, yeah, I know, it's kind of weird, but I try to sleep the side way just because my wife also does that too. And also it helps me prevent my hagishiri because the
Mm,
pressure is on this side, and then I can't really do grinding on my teeth,
I see.
grinding of the teeth. So that also helps. So
Is it so bad? You're grinding of your teeth?
yes, yes. So yeah, it's a total approach to how to improve your English, but
Mm,
yeah, I mean, lots of things you can do.
I, s- I see.
Maybe you
You
don't
know,
believe me about the sleeping on the sideways, but
no, not necessarily,
okay.
but to us Japanese who are learning English, learning to speak English in Japan, mostly in Japan, belonging to a speech club and practice speech in English is by and in itself is a feat, is an accomplishment. I really I can't believe we make a speech in English on a constant basis. So that's amazing. Okay, the next question is, you mentioned some characteristics of native speakers of English who really have relaxed throat and speak from the deep recess of the throat. And one of them is they can hold water in the deeper part of the throat. Can you do that yourself?
This was one of the first things Gina told me when she was
Right.
really inventing all these things or discovering all these things about, yeah, the difference
I
between
can't.
Japanese and Westerners.
I can't imagine. I can't even imagine doing that myself. Having the water deep in the throat.
So she told me to experiment it. So I was holding like this a glass of water and put water into my mouth, and I was able to reach really close to the midsection of the throat with it.
Mm.
And
Is
when
is midsection enough?
I think that's as far as you can go. And actually, every day I do that with gargling thing. That after I brush my teeth, I use the some kind of Listerine or something product to
Oh yeah, yeah. Listerine.
power clean
I
my
heard about it.
mouth and the throat, and I actually do reach this level.
Okay. Is it a matter? Did you practice it, or was it
No, just a matter
just
of
came natural to you?
letting it go with no power, just to relax your
So,
throat. Yeah,
so do you think anybody, even Japanese, can do it? If
easily,
they,
easily.
oh, really?
Yeah,
Maybe I should try it.
try it, and it really helps your throat to be cleaner.
Open
It
up.
is a
Oh,
really
I know.
refreshing feeling if you do that.
Oh, okay. Okay. I see. And another thing is they can talk or speak uh, when you're having your teeth worked on by a dentist with your mouth open.
Of course, they cannot really articulate well, but they can do that to the level where they are, how do you say, intelligible? Intelligible, yeah,
At least they can make themselves understood.
yeah. But ever since
Uh,
I heard that, when I am in a dentist and my hygienist is working on my, teeth, I feel, am I supposed to speak or what? Because she usually keeps talking and talking while she's working on my teeth. So I can't tell if I have to try to say something when my mouth is open and, yeah.
anyway, those are the things we haven't even heard of or we haven't even imagined unless you introduce those
Right.
phenomena to us.
But have you tried doing the speaking without moving your mouth? 腹話術,
Well,
whatever the word is. Venti, what? I cannot.
I've never practiced fukuwajutsu, but since Eigo Nodo teaches speaking English without
Right.
moving too much of your mouth, so in a way I have practiced that, and
Yeah, I
I
guess.
think I got better
Okay.
at it.
I think that's one way to practice yeah, speaking. But I guess I need the lips at least to say P. Oh, that's
Yeah,
one of the
you.
small number of consonants that require the use of the lips. Maybe B and P.
Mm, okay. What's the next question?
Lots of questions.
Um,
One thing that I
okay.
have been trying to do, by the way, is I feel like I have overcome nervousness when I speak. And because of that, I am able to kind of challenge myself to use expressions that I would not probably use if I were too nervous.
Mm,
So, yeah, I want to be able to go to the next level of, yeah, speech making
mm, mm. Um,
by
you.
enriching vocabulary or,
Uh-huh.
more effective way of phrasing expressions. So I want to try those things myself. I always
How
thought that I have to really overcome the issue of nervousness. And when I get there, I'm able to do more things with my speech.
How often do you practice? I mean, do you join this club activities?
This happens
How
every
frequent
2
is it?
weeks.
Every 2 weeks.
Yes. And we meet during the lunchtime. It's probably like
Oh, I see.
20 of us.
So it's not what we call after 5 activities. You do
No,
that during lunchtime. I
during the
see.
lunchtime. Yep.
So your extracurricular activities include practicing kendo, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken.
Yeah.
You still do that, right?
Right. Yeah. Can I come back to a little bit to another issue? When I do this kind of English conversation on like live, sometimes in my mind I feel like, did I say that correctly or did I say that wrong? Like I just said, during the lunchtime, right? But I'm pretty sure that it should be like during lunchtime.
During the line.
I don't think I need the, but I said it. When I come back to this video, I look at it and say, I should have said during lunchtime. And that's how I'm kind of trying to learn not to make any more mistakes of the same kind.
I see.
Yeah, this is what I was just talking with us of how to improve English by trying and speaking and making mistakes and
But to do that, somebody else or the other party on the other end of the line has to point it out, or you have the third party
right.
who is, sort of, you need an oversight or something.
Part of the speech club activities, we have roles at the meeting. Like one of them is like somebody who introduces everybody. I forgot the name of it, but another one is grammarian. So this person will check your grammar, and he or she would count. He or she will count how many
Grammar
you'll be
mistakes
using.
you
Yeah,
make.
yeah.
I see. I see.
So there's a
So,
structure of how to improve ourselves in this club.
so even native, I'm sure in this speech club there are many native speakers, right?
Right.
So even native speakers have their speech checked grammatically by these grammarian.
Right.
I see.
Most of the time it is about so these casual expressions that we are trying to avoid. Yeah.
That's very interesting. And
Can I tell you one more thing I want to improve in this kind of setting is when I go back to this video and watch it, I can see sometimes that our voices are kind of interacting too much, like how do you say, we're not making smooth transition with each other, when we speak. But that's probably because I'm not listening to your breathing pattern very carefully. That's what happens, I think.
what do you exactly mean by breathing patterns?
If I'm listening to you very carefully, I'm not just listening to your voice, but I'm kind of listening to your breathing pattern a little bit behind the voice. So I feel like I have to wait until you really, really exhaust your air from the lungs.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I'm kind of too quick to respond, and then as a result, it gets really messy. So that's one of the things I want to improve on.
I see. Does that happen even with when you speak in Japanese?
In Japanese, you are supposed to kind of scramble intentionally and explicitly, like a jet's flying. そうですよね。そうです。Like that, I think. But in English, you don't do that, and you kind of wait until the other person finishes completely.
I see. So you don't really, as they say, talk on top of each other,
Right.
speak on top of each other. When I'm now in the sales department, right? And the sales department people are very different from those in other departments. They have so much to say. They want to say, their own opinions. They're very assertive. So when we have this video conference, or in Japanese we say テレビ会議, we very often end up talking on top of each other. They start speaking before the other people end their sentences. So sometimes it gets very messy, and somebody has to intervene to sort of organize the meeting.
That's interesting. Yeah.
By the way, Kat-san, can you pronounce the word barubu?
I don't even know how to spell it.
Valve.
Valve.
Wow. Okay. I think you're doing it very well, because I think there are very few Japanese people who can pronounce this word properly. Maybe because the V sound included, two V sounds included in this word. They can't pronounce it correctly, but I think you're doing it very, very correctly. So
thank you. It's interesting, something about the sound of V, because it is, I mean, the true sound of V and the sound that we Japanese think is the correct V, there's so much disparity between the two.
Yeah.
So I feel like I am saying V correctly, consistently. But
Yeah.
because I also am Japanese, I feel like, did I say that correctly? Like my voice. But I think I'm doing that correctly. I think the Japanese people are expecting to hear this kind of sound around here, but it's more like the whole muscle vibrating valve voice. Yeah.
And you really have to relax your mouth or lips when you pronounce this, or any other English words. But like you said, Japanese are so used to biting your lower lip when they pronounce this word, this consonant. So they can't really get it right.
It
Like,
requires a lot of 発想の転換 switching of the mind, I think. Okay, even myself, although I spent so many years before Eigo Nodo, speaking as a Japanese person, although my English was relatively good. So even still, today I have some habit of going back to the, old way of not just pronouncing, but also hearing things in a certain way. So it's going to be a constant struggle, because you and I have studied English for so many years, and but people who are starting new, or should I say starting anew, I guess anew is a word, I think. 福祉ですよね. They can just learn English in the correct way from the beginning. So that's the advantage.
Yeah, I envy them, really. I envy them. They have Eigo Nodo right from the beginning.
If they can believe, yes. Yeah.
And I wish you could have more opportunities to learn, to teach much younger people. Now I have an impression you teach mostly adults,
Right.
instead of say high school students or junior high school students.
Yep. I have taught some college students recently. Yeah, so that's a good thing.
Would it be difficult to teach Eigo Nodo to say 中学生 or 高校生? Would it be difficult?
Oh, no, it's even easier, I think.
Oh, you think?
Are more intuitive and spontaneous, and they just repeat what they hear.
If that's really the case, you really should give it a try more. You'll be able to see the improvement more in an obvious way.
Yeah, some people are really, how to say, adaptive to...
Adaptive?
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of confusing. Adopt versus adapt. I guess in this case, adaptive, I believe. Yeah. Yeah, so when I'm speaking English in this way, I kind of sometimes I have this in my head things going on. Did I say this correctly? Did I say that correctly?
E-
Yeah.
So even Kaz-san, it's nothing new with us. We do that all the time here in Japan. So even Kaz-san living in America is still, suffering from that.
It's interesting because I started practicing in the speech club. I have probably improved my communication skill, and I was able to do more with my colleagues recently over the past year, especially. Even though I'm a non-native speaker of English, they asked me to be I just did a proposal manager for a proposal to submit to funder, and I felt good about that because I have done lots of technical things in the past, but I'm finally doing things that regular American people would do, and I feel I can attribute that to my training from this speech club activity.
By the way, Kaz-san, I understand your major at the Chicago University was sociology, and I'm sure sociology taught in America involves a lot of work with figures and numbers. But you were teaching English at a high school in Osaka, so you're not really statistically inclined,
Right.
especially in the past. So why did you become a statistician after you came to the?
Originally, I was interested in uh, sociology of education using qualitative methods involving interviews or uh, ethnography, which
What?
means that you
Yeah.
go to the field, you live with subjects, and you experience what they experience, and then you study more qualitatively. Because back in 1990s, I read a book about Bosozoku. Um, it was an
Uh,
ethnography of Bosozoku, and he was a graduate of the University of Chicago, Professor Sato of, I think, Hitotsubashi University or something else, and he studied Bosozoku's life by living together with them or having, intensive communication and interview with them. So that's how I thought I would be uh, studying at the University of Chicago. But once I got there, I think it's partly because of my language limitation, and also the field itself is very quantitative. So I had to take statistics and methods courses with other students. And it worked
mm,
out for me also because such a quantitative class, statistics class, requires only one book. If you take a course in qualitative methods, you're going to have to be reading like 5, 6, 7 books a semester, a quarter. So statistics was easier to study too.
I see.
And without that kind of quantitative skill, you wouldn't be able to get a job, like research assistant job, to maintain your yeah life. And most of job opportunities out there require quantitative skills in statistics and methods.
In Japan, your professors, especially when you're in a technical field, your professors sort of refer you to certain job opportunities, right? Is it real? Is it pretty much the case in the U.S. as well?
Yes, when I finished my PhD, my advisor said that there's this opportunity opening for a postdoc in Florida. So that's how I went down to Florida. And
Oh, really?
yeah, it was the University of South Florida, and I helped one of the education-related projects to do. Yeah, and I
Mm,
was a statistics data analyst, and I was also able to learn more about research, craft of research, so to speak.
mm,
But it wasn't like, oh, I really want to pursue this field in this way. But it was more like, okay, there's a lot of funding in the area of quantitative evaluation of educational interventions. So I went to become an analyst of the project that evaluated educational reform in America. And then,
You mean you can't really do your research unless there's a enough funding for
Right.
that.
And but the trick of the trade is there's a lot of funding because those are important topics. The federal or local government want to invest on issues that are very important socially and policy-wise. So you follow the money, and the money is in the area that is considered important. So it kind of makes sense. There's this matching of,
So do you actually make proposals of certain policies to the government?
We usually respond to proposal requests. And,
Wow. Have you had your proposals actually realized by the local or state level governments?
Yes, we have been successful. Otherwise, we won't be able to maintain ourselves. So we have been successful with,
Can you give me an example of such proposals?
Our company, our group has been doing a project funded by the U.S. Department of Education, and it is called What Works Clearinghouse. We have to read lots of research studies about educational intervention programs, such as, let's say, there's this program for mathematics education, and many researchers have evaluated the effectiveness of such approaches by doing experiments. So what we do as reviewers is to read the articles and decide if the study authors have used scientifically correct methods, and if those studies pass certain criteria, standards, then we say, okay, this study passes the standards. And the U.S. Department of Education collects evidence for good educational programs, so that teachers or policymakers of education are able to decide what kind of approach, what kind of educational programs work to prevent, for example, student dropout, or to improve students' achievement in mathematics or reading, or whatever they think is important for education. I don't think in Japan there's a lot of evaluation work going on, because
But you know what? These days, the books on statistics are selling very well. There's even a bestseller that's called 統計学は最強の学問であるだったかな. The book is enormously popular. It is hirazumi, what we call hirazumi ってわかりますか?
Display, kind of flat display.
Yeah. All the popular books are laid out in hirazumi. A couple of days ago, I watched a program called Close Up Gendai after 7 o'clock news on NHK, and it featured statisticians that are very much in demand in corporate society in Japan right now.
Maybe I can get a job in Japan then.
Yeah, the program says we need more statisticians. There are not enough specialists to support the workload, to support the demand in Japan right now. So maybe you should come back.
I should come back. That's a great idea. But statistics and evaluation methods are very important to decide policy decisions, to make policy decisions based on data. You don't want to really just make a policy and execute it just because you think it works. So,
Right.
one example of such a thing in Japan is, I know that they have special high schools for language learning, like English, special high school. And I don't know what kind of evaluation work they would do with them, but I feel like Japan's Department of Education is not doing too much. But in America, we would do rigorous examination of effectiveness of such educational programs, whatever they are. Whenever you have to spend public money on such innovation, intervention.
But my impression is American education, they may produce, those top-notch, really good, how do you say, experts, but it doesn't really do any good to the average population, right? I mean, the level of aptitude of American students, at least on the average level, they're not very high, are they?
There's so much intervention or investment by private foundations, such as the Gates Foundation.
Bill Gates.
They're trying to invest on urban youth with a limited level of opportunities. So I think people are paying attention and spending money for them. But there's some flexibility in the system in America, I think. If somebody wants to throw away money, invest money on innovative approach of helping students, they can do that. But I'm not sure if the same thing can be done in Japan, because you have a very strict system of textbook selection and entrance examination system. So there's not so much room for new
flexibility.
Yeah, flexibility for such a thing, which worries me a little bit.
So,
Yeah.
anyways, they're saying
I gotta get a job in Japan.
exactly.
Yeah.
You'll be very much in demand in Japan right
So
now.
I guess I'm gonna have to stop saying things that are controversial.
Yeah, that's part of being Japanese.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it has a lot to do, obviously, with the IT revolution, でしょ、カズさん。because statisticians obviously deal with enormous amounts of data. And now data is readily available with all these computers and IT, with the digital revolution, right?
Yeah, we gotta learn from data, collect data, and learn from data to make decisions. Scientific data management or decision making.
I think things are changing right now, but Japan is basically, how do you put it? The education is more tending towards bunkake.
That's like backward?
I think now things are changing. And at my son's high school, for example, teachers, all of the teachers say, if you go and pick the subjects of bunkake, or if you go the route of bunkake, you won't be able to get a job. So if you want to get a job, you should become science major or a mathematic major, So things are different right now, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like I always heard from Indian people and Chinese people that in their countries, engineering and medicine and science have been the utmost emphasis of the country. But Japan, it has a very mysterious approach to assigning kids to different channels. Most famously, Bunke and Rike, and that system is a little bit too rigid.
Exactly.
Yeah. In America, people don't really claim their major before entering the university, so they can just try out whatever they want to study and decide. And what is interesting here is that their tuition does not change just because you take science course or literature course. It's the same price. So
And you can even change that, right? If you don't find it interesting after all.
Yes.
In Japan, in theory you can, but very few people actually change that because it takes, lots of money. Maybe you have, like Ueda-san, I think is a typical example. He has to start right from the beginning, right?
Right. He was, I think, something like an economics or commerce major initially,
Yeah.
and he graduated. He became an interpreter, but he decided to go back to school to become a doctor. So
Right.
that kind of system requires strong individual will,
Exactly.
and it doesn't help, because such an individual needs luck and
Mm.
money. But I have to say that the system has to really encourage people to pursue whatever they want, and we have to trust in people's decisions.
Mm. Agree.
But the question is, can we move towards that direction in Japan when things stand as they are?
Oh, I think there are a lot of people with vested interests in the current system,
Right.
and they raise voices whenever there's a movement in the other directions. So there's no question it would be difficult.
If I can push myself a little bit further on Eigo Nodo again, one merit or one potential of Eigo Nodo is to help people, whoever they are, geographically or wherever they are in the economic ladder, social ladder, they can try speaking English, and they, even without going to college, they may be able to educate themselves using English. So that's one potential of how Eigo Nodo could serve the purpose of, this helping ourselves to become more able economically.
Yeah. Right. Have you had any practitioners of Eigo Nodo who are like that? I mean, they haven't been to even to universities, but they learned English ever since they had encountered Eigo Nodo, and they had become something of a specialist or something.
I guess, unfortunately,
Any-
our approach hasn't expanded too much to see good examples of that. But I know that even though the practitioners exist in every possible field,
Mm.
occupation, and also they are all over the place, including like the most eastern end of Hokkaido to Okinawa. So
Yeah, it's really expanding by leaps and bounds.
I was just thinking a couple of days ago that the current paradigm of education is like this. It requires necessarily movement of people from countryside. If you are good at studying, let's say in countryside, you're going to have to move yourself all the way to cities. And as a result, you live so far away from where you are from, like from your hometown. That's so inefficient, and it requires too much sacrifice. And then these kids will not come back to countryside. But I'm
Yeah.
wondering if the new system is possible where people can just stay where they are born in their own hometown, and they can still use English and commerce. I mean, make commerce with wherever they want to do commerce with outside Japan, so that the country evenly, wherever you are, can kind of benefit from this globalized system of economy. And I'm hoping that Eigo Nodo will help to go to that direction.
Wow, you really dream big.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in theory, with the internet and everything,
Right.
you can do that, I think. Not many people are actually doing it. And frankly, to young people getting out of their hometown and moving to big cities like Tokyo, Fukuoka, or Hakata, or Osaka, it's, one of the steps of growing up. So I'm not really against young people venturing out of their hometown and going to the big cities. But I understand where you're coming from.
But another thing that is kind of an obstacle to this new paradigm of work is that this system of 正社員, right? Because companies tend to hire people and then they tend to stay in the company, and they usually are protected legally because of the status of 正社員.
Mhm.
So that is probably why people have to do tenking, right? They have to move around all the way to countryside, right?
Mm.
Because they cannot just hire people in the region where you don't have people. Do you know what I mean? One summer in college, I was walking in my hometown. This was like 35 years ago, and I saw my friend from college out of nowhere, and hey, I said, "What are you doing here?" It's like accidentally I met my college friend, and he in such a countryside in Japan, in Hiroshima, and he said, "Oh, I work for Mitsubishi or Mitsui Kinzaku," because we had, I think, a plant, and I was like, how come they don't hire locally people, and why do they have to bring in people from Kyoto, Tokyo? I guess that's because people are hired fresh from college and they are protected legally. So employing people is not very flexible. So
Well, what you say is maybe true to a certain extent, but take Mitsubishi Heavy Industry in Nagasaki, for example. They do hire a lot locally, but they also do what they call centralized hiring in Tokyo, and they send out people from Tokyo to each factories all over Japan. So it works both ways.
So the notion behind that is that the education is centralized and talents are kind of concentrated in big cities. Is the
Yeah,
idea?
yeah. I think after all, all the supposedly good universities
So to go
are
against that trend, we
concentrated
need
in
to
big
kind of,
cities, right?
I guess we're gonna have to empower local, remote
Yeah.
areas,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what Eigo Noto taught me is that oftentimes people have talents despite their test scores. And in the
Sure.
globalized economy, it is not so much
Sure.
of test scores that matters, but your true talents.
Sure.
And talents are, I think, evenly distributed in Japan all over the place.
Oh, I think big corporations in Japan, they just don't want to take any chances. The easiest way to at least to pick good students, at least majime students. You go pick out of graduates from the big universities
Right.
with good test scores. That's the safest way. They may not be such a great talents like Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, but you can't go wrong
Right.
with that kind of method. I think that's it. That's it. But like you said, in a globalized economy, that practice has to change. No question about it.
And one way to really go towards that direction is that with Eigo Nodo, we are increasingly noticing that educated people have how can I put this? More struggles or difficulty with English. But if you live in the countryside and if you just speak English like you speak your own dialect, we can communicate better, right? So that's the irony of our education system. The better educated person speaks poorer English just because you become stiff and you rely on visual information, or should I say letters, words, and your communication skill will be very limited as a result. But yeah, so that's the irony of a system in Japan, and
Yeah.
I hope
And
we can change that.
another big issue with the current Japanese education system is that it is just too expensive to send your kids to the universities in big cities. In my days, average, how do you say, shiokuri from your parents was 80,000 Japanese yen. But now they say 130,000 Japanese yen. Now, when you have two children going to the universities in big cities at the same time, how can the parents make their living? Working with the average Japanese companies. It's so now even in Japan, I know student debt issue is a very serious problem in America, but the same is becoming very much true in Japan as well.
Yeah, so by necessity, our society has to really change to the direction of, not so much relying on the current system of examination-driven system, but somehow we need to have a system to empower local areas cheaply.
Mm-hmm.
And English is one of the things that we can really improve very cheaply because of hopefully Eigo Nodo. Or just simply when you learn new words, just clap. That can change the whole learning experience of kids. That's so cheap. Just clap to the syllable.
Oh, I see. Now I get it.
Yeah. Although, of course, Eigo Nodo should be preferable textbook of my choice. But hopefully it happens that way. But
Yeah, I want to get my kids interested in Eigo Nodo, but unfortunately, they are not interested in English itself. So we'll see.
well,
I have to wait and see.
did you at least mention to
They
them?
they know. I always have this Eigo Nodo book, although I'm not on the video, but I always have this Eigo Nodo book and Kikanju
Oh yeah, good.
Eigo Hitoreru on my desk. So
we are working on the third book, and
right, right. Could
uh,
you introduce at least superficially
motivation
what
behind
it's
this
all
is that we provided ways to improve your listening skill and pronunciation technique. But I feel like many people still struggle because their understanding of grammar is very rigid.
Mm,
My understanding of the current paradigm of grammar is that it is based on classification of, say, for example, let's say it. Okay, the scholars tend to classify it under like 8 categories, right? Like it
hmm
is sunny, meaning, or it is referring to the weather, or it means sore, or it is interesting to think about it this way. It's like a karishugo no it. So it feels like the current um, paradigm, so to speak, is about classification, which is more or less the same about pronunciation. They kind of classified everything into rigid categories,
mm.
but we really want to kind of deconstruct that and reconstruct the easier way of understanding English grammar, and we've been working on that for a while, but it's a difficult process. But still, we have the basic framework. So hopefully,
Sounds interesting. Is it coming out with the same publisher, Sanshusha?
I believe so, but we are still working on a book proposal
I
as
see.
well as the book itself, and they're going to have to look at it and see if it's worth printing, and but it also, I mean, I think our book, the third book, will explain why some people like yourself and myself are good at English. Like we kind of naturally mastered it somehow versus people who continue to struggle. And there's a big difference between the two. Even though we are given the same textbook or, the same kind of stuff in school, I think I want to be able to explain why, that happens that way. I think it's the way you process information or you kind of take in. It's essentially how you learn grammar too. But again, our book is about how to do things. It's not about how to study. There's a difference. I think a lot of books, especially pronunciation books or study guide, is how to study. But our approach is how really to execute.
I see.
Yeah.
So you have no idea when it's coming out right now.
We have a really strong urge to really push forward, but I feel like it may take a little bit of time.
So maybe next year, right?
Maybe next year.
I see. Okay. We're all looking forward to it.
Yeah, including some practical issues such as how to use the.
Yeah.
Which has been bothering Japanese people forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember you once mentioned that you wanted to publish a book on grammar, but what was the word you mentioned? What you used?人質?
Yes.
人質に取りました. I didn't quite understand what you're trying to say at that time.
We did discover how to explain the in the most efficient way. But let's say something happens to me or to Gina, then nobody will know. So it's like a piece of. I'm sorry, I think I'm a little bit deviating from this conversation. Okay, so 人質に取った. So we feel like, okay, we have it. And we have it, and we're going to really release it. But I feel like the current status of Eigo Nodo, it's still a minor, existence. I'm afraid if we get it out, people are going to look at it and they're going to just say, they're going to just copy it. So
I see.
Hopefully we're going to be able to kind of be, how do you say, reasonably famous enough so that people will respect what we will release and where it's coming from, if that makes sense to you. So in that way, 人質に取りました. So, yeah.
It sounded to me in those days that you were kind of, you use it as a kind of a punishment to us readers of your book or of your blog. So we might have done something wrong to you, or
no.
Anyways.
But I think I used that expression a long time ago.
Exactly,
Probably about a year ago.
long time ago. Yeah, more than a year ago.
Right. Thanks to Mr. Ueda and others, I think we have softened our image.
Do you still get that hate, hate messages or
no, I don't think so.
interferences?
I think they have given up
That's
on
good.
us.
That's good.
I don't know if it's a good thing because it may mean that they lost interest, right? But I hope they have forgiven us.
But your readership is expanding, right?
I guess so, slowly and firmly.
Although you don't teach in Washington, D.C. anymore.
Not much lately.
Right.
Yeah. さっきね、楽天の野田さんに、お教えしましてですね、楽天のエグゼクティブの一人の方で、
野田さんっていらっしゃるんですか？
その、社内の英語仕様で有名ですね、あの会社はね。
そう。そ
れでツイートしていただきましたですね、さっき。上川さんに教えてもらったら、ものすごい英語が、クリアに聞ける経験をしたというような感じのことを言っていただきまして。
そうですか。
嬉しかったですね。
私は残念ながら、ある程度もうできる段階で、こういうふうに言うと口はばったいですが、できる段階で英語ノートに合っちゃったんで、そういう経験は残念ながらしてないんですけど、でもよく私言うんですけど、 聞けるようになるときは、こう、カーテンがバサッとこう落ちるようにね、まあ、英語のできる方ってみんなそういう経験をある程度されてると思うんですけど、本当にそれは素晴らしい経験ですからね。ぜひ、英語のでそういう経験を皆さんに味わっていただきたいとは私も思いますけど。
I hope so. Yeah. Alright, so it's been a pleasure to be speaking with you.
なんか取り留めもない話になりましたけども。
楽しく答えることができました。ありがとうございます。
もうちょっと、ちゃんとインタビュー、できたらよかったですが、どうだったでしょうか。
You did a good job, I think. I was able to say a lot of things, and so next time you come, hopefully you can.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh, I
stop
actually
by.
received an email from this news reporter or journalist
Oh, okay.
from Sankei Shimbunshia.
My neighbor.
Yeah, email of greeting. The next time I come over to the DC, let's have a drink with Kat-san and all that.
He's a
So
fun
I
guy,
said,
isn't he?
he is. He's definitely, Sankei Shimbun itself is leaning towards the right, and he's rather kind of a right wing, but he is an interesting person. I really appreciate the opportunity of seeing him.
I just wanted to tell people, because they're not, they may be listening to our conversation, but they may not necessarily know who this journalist is. But
Of course not.
近所に住んでる産経新聞の記者さんで、佐々木さん、佐々木瑠衣さん。で、結構ね、産経新聞のウェブサイトで記事が出てるんですよね。DC 関係の。
すみません、ちょっと今聞こえなくなったですね。
あ、そうですか。産経新聞の佐々木さんが近所にいるというね。Are you there?
Right. Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
But this.
Well, to conclude this conversation, I thank you so much for giving me opportunities to say things.
Likewise, thank
Yeah, thanks. So
you. I wish I could have done better, but
you did a good job.
I'll
Thank you.
try and work on my interviewing skills next time.
Okay, that sounds like a deal. Okay. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye bye.